Thank you. Okay, am I on, Phil?
Phil, his mic does
Am I
not seem
on?
to be on.
Okay, y'all here. Now, can you see, is this going to impede the screen?
We've got three of them.
Okay, good.
We got
All
three
right,
of them.
so I am very flattered to be here. It's very, very exciting to be part of a cutting edge. The mic, what?
It's up.
It's to turn it up. I have a little quiet voice, tiny little quiet voice. This is a really cutting edge endeavor that Bob and Mark and his group are doing, and I'm very honored to play a part in it. What I'd like to concentrate the next 2 or 3 hours that I share with you on is not what to do in the next 72 hours or whatever remaining time is left, but instead of what to do for the remaining 101 minus that days and on into infinity. I feel like Buzz Lightyear. And so in the unlikely event that you don't know a little bit about me, let me give you the 3-minute overview, not for egotistical purposes, but so you'll appreciate what I'm going to try to do here with some of you specifically and with all of you universally. I grow businesses for a living. Large, small, complex, mature, technology, no tech, low tech, startups. I help people with ideas, convert them to businesses. I do it through a similar process. I teach them the meaning of business life first. I figure out the highest, best, easiest, safest, fastest way to take their idea or their business and get an incredible lift. I then figure out how to perpetuate it with a systematic, strategic approach. I turn them from being tactical, meaning just thinking about doing something for the moment, to strategic, meaning getting a game plan that constantly advances, enhances, moves forward all the momentum and the income-generating activities. And what I'd like to do is do a very condensed and not fragmented, but compartmentalized version of that with all of you that I will generalize and then I will individualize. And I want to make a couple of comments throughout. And then Bob, if he's here for the duration, are you going to be here for it? Well, he can be my torque converter, my interpreter. If I get too lofty or too tangential, he's got my permission to smack me down, stop me, interrupt, either restate it. I don't care. I'm here for you. But I want to take what I've got $7 billion plus to my name. $4 billion of that was done not going into the conventional treacherous waters that most people go into, not going into display advertising, not using salespeople, not spending much of any capital, but playing off of other people's assets, other people's opportunities, other people's resources. And I want to teach you a bit about that. To start with, rapidly, I'm going to give you J. Abraham Business 101, and we're going to go through a model, and Bob has very graciously created a copy of that you'll be distributing to them sometime at the end, right? So take notes, because that gets your mind. By the way, anybody who take notes, for whatever this is worth, I don't tend to be as technologically sophisticated as most people, but I've done lots of scientific research. Taking notes by hand, believe it or not, gets you a far greater outcome than doing it on your computer, because you have to think about it and it processes through a totally different part of your brain. But when you take notes, the key to it is to take a line vertically on the page, 1/3 and 2/3, split the page 1/3 and 2/3. The little third, you write down literally what the concept is. The 2/3, you force yourself in the moment to interpret and expand that idea to a specific application, because if you trust your mind to remember this next week, it won't do it. Okay, so most people in business, startup, existing, they try to build their business very traditionally, very laboriously, very slowly, very incrementally, little short steps. I'm very much an opportunist, an ethical one, but I want to basically spend the least amount of time, the least amount of effort, the least amount of money, the least amount of resources, and get the most amount of yield now, forevermore, and even reclaim what I've done in the past. So that's how I operate. You don't have to, but I would suggest it's a lot more productive, profitable, and enjoyable than the way most people strive and struggle. So I've got a concept that I teach everybody I work with, and I'm teaching it to you. It's called the Power Parthenon Strategy of Geometric Business Growth. And Phil, I think this one was set up backwards. I want to go to the three-way to grow a business model first, so you might have to advance forward. When people come to me and say, Jay, I want to grow my business, but I know there must be just an infinite number of ways, I say you're wrong. There are only three ways to grow any profit-rendering enterprise, or even a nonprofit enterprise. There are lots of variations, but only three ways, and they are immutable. You have that slide? Okay, so when it's got that little block, can we get rid of that? Oh, okay, good. I don't know those things. Okay, so here's what they are. You increase the number of buyers, prospects, customers, or clients. That's number one. That's what almost everybody focuses on. A lot easier, a lot simpler, because you've already got their trust, is to increase the size of the transaction, which can mean either the price, the package of items you put together, or the qualitative category. Instead of going from the base, you go to the more deluxe. And there's a lot of, by the way, I'm giving you broad strokes as you're making notes. You got to think how that applies to your specific situation. And if it doesn't directly apply, I swear to you, it indirectly applies, so you can translate it. The third and the most overlooked way to grow any enterprise big time is increasing the frequency, I'll add, or the utility of repurchase. Meaning if you've only got one product to sell, you're going to say, well, I have nothing else to sell. Wrong. And I'm going to show a lot of you when we do the individualization today how to do that. But the more times you get someone to come back over and over and over again, or you find ways to make money from them yourself or for others, or you find ways for them to generate other referrals to you from the same initial first sales effort, that's leverage. Now, I'm going to talk about leverage because Bob, on the other side of his activities in his real estate endeavors, teaches creative leverage through real estate. And that's very impressive. But I'm going to basically humble that. The leverage you've got in business building, in marketing, it pales real estate by comparison. Let me give you an example. No matter what you sell, product, service, how you sell it, internet, salespeople, display advertising, trade show, I don't care. It costs you the same fixed, fill in the blank, time, effort, money, opportunity cost, because there's an opportunity cost on everything you do, whether that effort produces 1 lead, 10 leads, 1 sale, 5 sales, 10 sales. Send a sales letter, do an email, costs the same whether it pulls a 0.5% response, 3% response, 10% response. Costs you the same fixed amount, effort, opportunity cost, cash, to generate a $50 sale, $100 sale, $500 sale. Costs you the same to generate that client or customer, patient, whatever business you're in, whether he, she, or it buys one time, never buys again, buys one time a year, one time every 6 months, one time every quarter, one time every month, one time every week. Costs you the same to get them, whether they refer nobody to you, one person a year, one person a month. Now, you start to see the kind of leverage you've got. You all have that kind of leverage, but it's never been explained. And they really don't teach this in this form, even if you go to grad school and B school. So what I try to do is figure out the highest and best ways to get everything you do to pull the most and advance the most to make all three of these ways to grow a business work. Next slide. I'm sorry, do you mind doing that for me? Rather me do it? Thanks, Phil. Okay, I got a model here, and you're going to get this, so you don't have to write it down, but writing it down is good for your brain. I've taken a hypothetical business because I want to show you the power of geometry if you start focusing on these three ways, and then I'm going to hammer all of you that are selling books and the like and tell you what's wrong with this picture. I've taken a hypothetical business. It's got 1,000 buyers. They're spending $100 when they buy. They're coming back and buying 2 times a year. The business does what? $200,000 in business, right? Now, next slide, Phil. By just increasing each of those categories 10%, and I don't have time today to get into the ways to do it, but I have done as a little primer for you, a little cheat sheet, giving you a dozen or so of the best techniques in each of those three ways on this sheet that Bob's going to present to you, and it's going to be almost a verbatim of this so you can see it. If you increase your number of clients from what you were doing just 10%, if you increase the size of the sale by just 10%, if you increase the number of times people come back by 10%, that doesn't mean they come back 10 times. It means 1 out of 10 come back one more time a year. With this model, it doesn't increase the business 10%, does it? It increases it a third. And for a lot of businesses, there's a fixed expense in servicing, the transaction, the same staff, the same computer, the same fulfillment. Everything else is a direct expense, which is very small, which means that additional, if you've increased it not 10%, that additional 23% could double or triple the money you bring home or the money you have available to grow the business. Next one, Phil. If you increased across the board, I think this is a 33% increase, you'll see that the increase is more than double. And I'm just trying to show you how powerful geometry is. I want to go very fast on this, and you'll get the page. Next one. Okay, this is a list of ways you have available, of various techniques, tactics, or applications you've got available to grow your client list. And I use the word client for a very specific reason, and it would take an hour to explain it, but it's very powerful. And if you will allow, I will send you a document that is about 20 pages that is a transcript of a session I did on the strategy preeminence, and you're welcome to distribute it. Okay, I'm just going to go through a couple. Referral generating systems. How many people here are in business right now? An active business. Okay, raise your hand if that business currently can honestly say that 10 to 100% of your activities currently come from referrals or word of mouth. Stand up. I'm going to go around the room very quickly, and I want you to real quickly do a mental calculation. Calculate what the percentage is, calculate what the dollars it means annually, and include the amount of repurchases that come from those first-time sales. So if you do $100,000 a year and 20% is referral or word of mouth, that's $20,000. If you do $1 million and it's 50%, it's $500. I'm not going to do all of you, I'm just going to random. Percentage in dollars. 100%, how much is it in dollars? $100,000. $100,000. 15%, I'd say probably about $160,000. As loud as you can. 100,000. A lot of 100,000s here. 50%, 500,000. 60%, about 80,000, 60%. 80% over $1 million. It doesn't matter. You can do it. 150. 150. 100%. How much? 150. 80%. 100,000 is that magical number. 150. He beat it by 50%. 50%, 75. Don't sit down. All you stay for a minute. 75%, 700. 100%, 200. Now, remain standing. Everybody that can say 10, 20% or more represents referrals, word of mouth. I want you to remain standing if you have in place right now in your business at least one standardized, systematized, formalized referral generating strategy in place. Difference between a strategy and a tactic. The tactic is something you do sometimes, occasionally. A strategy is something you do all the time if you have staff or you have activities that interact with a buyer at the point of purchase, and anytime you have communication, this system is working 24/7. If you have that working, remain standing, at least one. If not, sit down. If you have, that's pretty impressive. If you have two, remain standing. That's very impressive. If you have three referral generating systems in place. 4. Okay. We've studied, the reason I'm able to do what I do is it's sort of the way my brain is programmed, but it's really that I've been able to work with 450 unrelated industries around the world over the last 20 years, and I've identified all kinds of approaches that are unique to one industry that every other industry doesn't know. And if you can take a concept that's as common as dirt in one industry and you start being the only one in your industry that uses it, it can have the power, the profit, the impact of an atom bomb. With referrals, we found 93 unduplicated referral generating systems, not tactics, systems that different kind of people in different industries have used that can be translated. You got to tweak a little bit because, a photo place that does babies, you got to modify what they do. But the point that I want to make, and if I had 3 days with you or 5 days, I would make it much strongly, is a referral-generated buyer buys quicker, negotiates less, buys more things, is more profitable, buys more often, refers more people, and costs you nothing. But most people spend all their time on advertising, on search engines, and anything other than that. And I'm trying to make a point. I was showing you a three-way. Getting a 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100% increase if you got an existing business, starting from scratch and engineering your new business for greatness and for enduring compound growth starts by saying, if we do well and we produce value and we can help the buyer identify, appreciate, and value that value, he or she should be able to be ethically programmed to generate referrals for us 24/7 forever. Referral generating strategies for anybody that renders any kind of good value that's perceived and desired should be a key. But I just was going to show you that. There's 93 ways to do it. Most people don't even have one that they do currently. They cost almost nothing. That's leverage big time and off the chart.
So, Jay, would you allow me to send them the list of the 93?
I will. All I will say to you is that we sell these and we use them, so it's being gifted to me, to Bob, to you, but not for anybody else. I don't want to see them freely distributed or so.
Raise your right hand.
Yeah, really, seriously.
I promise I will keep this to myself.
They're really cool things.
I will not copy this thing that Jay's going to give to Bob to give to you, to me. But I will use it. And I will do it.
Good. Great.
So help me, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're really cool. But I mean, there's something. Now there's a element to that you've just committed yourself to. One of the things that Bob knows about me, and I'm much mellower at this point in my life. I've done 70 seminars around the world with people, 1,000 people at a time, 500 people paying low end 5,000, high end 25,000. And I've not always been a fun, happy guy because I saw my purpose to move people to action, enduring action. I don't want to be your intellectual entertainment. If I gift you something, we studied these. These are driving about $200 million a year in sales just for the businesses that use them full time. If I send them to Bob, who resends them to you, and you go, wow, isn't that interesting? Gosh, I don't know how to grow my business. It'll be the greatest disappointment because I'm here for one reason, to move you to action on a sustained and systematic and strategic basis, and to challenge you to not allow yourself to equivocate, to contemplate, to procrastinate, to do anything but move forward in a strategic way. So it's my pleasure to do it, but you just said you would act on it. Really. The key to life is action and transaction. So very important. Okay, so you can see, and you'll get the list. Referral generating is the top, acquiring clients at a break even. I go all the way down it. I don't have time right now. The good news is you will have it. And if you want, Bob, I can even do a follow-up conference call for this group. And you can, sure, I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to. Okay, so point is this. The first step to making a mint with whatever business you have or you own or you get involved with or you finance is to master marketing. Marketing is the difference between mediocrity and millions. Strategic marketing is the mechanism of growth. It's the only real definitive leverage you've got left. You can't buy, and you maybe can go to India or China and get labor a little cheaper. Technology, unless you're brilliant and you have a patented technology or software, you're not going to have a great advantage there. Maybe you can buy advertising a little better. Maybe you can convert it to a little more of a variable cost, but your marketing ability is where you've got infinite leverage. There are going to be, no matter what business you're in, I'll try to give you a little introduction to it, between 10 and 25 what I'll call impact or leverage points you're going to be able to take advantage of in what you do. And each one of those, you have the ability to increase their performance from what they would normally do by as much as 21 times. If you can get 2,100% increase on 10 different areas every year, the compound dividend and the multiplied result it makes is off the wall. And that's why I've got so many businesses that have doubled, redoubled, doubled again, and they think it's unbelievable. It's not. Most people don't use the power, the strategic compound geometry that I'm trying to teach you very quickly. You guys even use it, halfway. It's going to be incredible. So you got this list. This is how to grow clients. Here's a whole list. Next one, Phil. This is ways you increase the size of the transaction. And by the way, in a lot of these, one of the keys is called programming your buyers. Programming your buyers. It's not like Jim Jones in Guyana, for those of you old enough to relate with me, who told all his followers to take strychnine, lace Kool-Aid, and die. It's benevolently and nobly programming your buyers to get the greatest long-term benefit from either what you do or the area that you're involved in. And that means from the very beginning of the relationship, you program them for the long term. When I bring people to my seminars, I program them that if every time they come and they spend $25,000, they get a $100,000 payoff, they would be silly not to come back once a year and keep doing it because the payoff would be compound. So we set in their mind the beginning. The person that I go to get my hair cut, I taught him to program his clients to come back to him the maximum time for the optimal look, because they'll feel their best. They'll be the most beautiful, the most handsome, the most effective in business, the sexiest to their people. And by doing that, he increased the frequency about 5 times a year, which put an extra $80,000 in his pocket, but it was in the best interest of his hair clients, because instead of looking ratty and ugly and unkempt, they all look like $1 trillion, and they're happier, their love life's better, they're performing better. So you always put the interest of your client first. I don't have a lot of time to go through this, but if you see programming, it's a benevolent process of directing the buyer in the very beginning for what's in his or her long-time best interest, and creating a blueprint for the beginning. Either you control the buying process or the buying process controls you. I'm all about, pro-action, strategic thinking, leading, not following. Next slide. Okay, these are ways, and again, I'm not going to go through them all. These are how you get the increased transaction frequency. This is how you get people coming back more and more often. Next slide. Okay, go back now to the first slides, the Power Parthenon. I'm all about creating geometry. I'm going very fast because I want to do individual work here. But the key to everything I teach is everyone else you compete against tries to grow incrementally or linear. You can grow exponentially or nonlinear by looking at the whole scope. And the way you do it is taking advantage of the power of marketing and business growth geometry. Okay, the Power Parthenon. Most businesses out there, I'm going to teach you 2 real quick distinctions. It's called the diving board theory of business versus the Parthenon theory of business. Most businesses I ever look at, most businesses you compete against, probably, unfortunately, most of your operating businesses, and if left to your own devices, most of your startup, and God bless Bob because he's trying to get you into whatever it is, 6 or 8 different areas here, but most businesses depend on one approach, revenue generating activity for the vast majority of their revenue. In a lot of them, it's Salesforce, some of them it's direct mail, some of it's internet. I use just as a model direct selling. The pillar is the revenue approach supporting it. The revenue is the diving board. And I use it as a diving board because, graphically that's what it looks like. And I've never seen a diving board be a permanent propellant upward. You do go up a little higher temporarily in your plummet down to earth. But if anything goes wrong and you're dependent on one activity, I use direct sales, it can be anything. The internet, spam filters get more rigid. Pay-per-click, somebody outbids you. Somebody emulates you, plagiarizes you, or worst of all, innovates you, does something better that's legitimately just superior because they got it better. And that happens all the time. You're screwed. You're screwed. If you have a sales force and cost of gas goes up, somebody else has a better presentation. One of the things I teach is risk reversal, very critical. Don't have a lot of time to get into it right here. But somebody comes up with a killer risk reversal that makes your approach feeble, you're just screwed. That's if you depend on one thing. Now give me the next one, Phil. Next one. That's interesting. It's supposed to be a pillar there, and for some reason, the outline doesn't load. I said, what happens if you add one more, just one more to the stability, and you can't tell, but in the graphics you're going to get, there's another pillar there, and you can see already it's more stable. The next one. Okay, this is what I try to do, and to Bob's great credit and Mark's, they're trying to teach you that. I try to create a power Parthenon that brings to bear multiple selling approaches that hit the same market from many different ways. Anybody been in the military? You know what force multiplier effect is? Do you? Can you explain it? Yes, no? Okay, who knows what force multiplier effect is? Okay, when there's a big war and they're trying to win and they're attacking the enemy, they will do it through a series of integrated processes. The first may be, intelligence gathering. Then they may be dropping, air to, land, whatever. Then they'll shoot from the water. Then they'll have the tanks, then the infantry, and, all kinds of combined activities because they don't know which one will deliver the final salvo, but they know that one will. Well, my concept is dual. You can take one market, and if you keep hitting them from many different points, it's a sequential process. It's like a positive Chinese water torture. But each time you do it, it's a profit center too because it makes money, but the marginal people who aren't yet sold or convinced get hit from another and another and another area. At the same time, it lets you penetrate areas you could never access. In my example here, I just plucked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are a number of different avenues you can pursue. Bob has many of those, maybe some different ones. But if you're going after market and you're going to go with direct salespeople, they got to call them, they got to get an appointment, or they got to call cold and take their shot. If you use telemarketing too, you can either go after markets that don't cost justify a salesperson. You can use telemarketing to set leads. You can use telemarketing after a salesperson goes and doesn't sell. You can use telemarketing to go back to old inactive prospects that didn't buy. You can use telemarketing to go to people who bought to reactivate them. You can use telemarketing to invite people to come to specific events, whether they be live or a teleconference or something like that, and on and on and on. But what I try to do for every business I've ever engineered long-term strategy for is build a power Parthenon. And the reason is geometry. If your main business was driven by the left one, it doesn't matter whether that's relevant right now, but just say we're depending on direct sales. And that was 100%. And we added telemarketing, that was another 10%. And we added referral systems, and that was another, let's say, 15 or 20%, because it should be. And we added joint ventures, and that's a biggie. I've done $4 billion of my 7 through joint ventures, and we'll talk about them in our examples. And we added direct mail. And we added regular advertising, but doing it right. And there's 2 ways to do it right. One is know how to write a great ad, and the other is make the publication your partner, so you lower by about 90% the cost, and you raise your break even by about, your chance of breaking even by about 10 times. You're developing a back end, which I'm going to hammer all of you to sell a book to right now. Endorsements. It's going to be powerful, but I'm going to demonstrate. If you do all these things, and each one only added 20%, remember the example of 10%, 10%, 10%, 33%? Well, I don't have my calculator, but if you did 20% more, 30% more, 10% more, 15% more, 5% more, it would be like 800%. Do you understand that? I'm going to blow your mind, and then I'm going to get into specific good stuff, but hopefully this is a good starting point for you. This is just the beginning. First thing you do is 3